Welcome into Locked On Knicks. Alex Wolf here, and the Knicks beat the Raptors 119-106 to start the weekend off right. I'm going to be talking about how Julius Randle had it going again, distributing the ball. In addition to figuring out a team that's given him problems in the past, Jalen Brunson killing it from three again, and is really starting to put up some very impressive numbers for the entire season. So I'll get into that. Josh Hart had 15 straight points by himself. Donte DiVincenzo made 7 3-pointers. Mitchell Robinson had 4 steals. Just a huge game all around for a bunch of guys again on the Knicks. I'll get into it right now on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome in to Locked On Knicks, and I want to remind you today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Knicks your first listen today and every day, whether you're checking us out on your favorite podcast platform or taking in the sights and sounds on YouTube. We appreciate you making us a part of your daily routine. Make sure you hit that notification bell on YouTube or the auto download function on your favorite podcast app so you never miss an episode. And I should also remind you that my name is Alex Wolf. I'm editor-in-chief of Knicks site, The Strickland, as you can find at thestrick.land. And the Knicks beat the Raptors 119-106. To my eye, I think part of that was because they played faster than usual. And I think they were really at their best versus the Raptors in this game. It mitigated the length advantage that Toronto kind of always has over the Knicks. We've seen in the past, like the thing, even when the Raptors, the last few years have been so-so, they've not been their best selves, especially, it's been a pretty big drop off the last few years in general since the title team. But they were still good for a couple years after that, and it's just kind of been like this gradual decline of they don't have enough ball handling, but they have tons of length. They just have a lot of really long players that can disrupt you on defense and all that stuff. And the Knicks are not a team that has a lot of length, and they seem to be extra bothered by a team like the Raptors most of the time. But I thought the Knicks just did such a good job of playing super fast, of making their decisions quickly, of keeping the Raptors on their toes the whole time rather than ISOing, letting themselves get bottled up by this team. And then if you get bottled up against the Raptors, forget about it, because that's where they're at their best. They have quick hands. They're, super long, athletic guys that, can get their hand in there, get the ball loose, can block you inside. Anyone from 2 to 5 on their team is a better than average shot blocker, in my opinion. So it's just a really smart way to approach playing this team on offense. The Knicks end this game with 30 assists, which was tied for their single game high this season. And Randle and Brunson especially stood out, getting the inside, kicking out to open teammates. Brunson, I think as much as he helped with getting inside and getting it out too, he was great in transition, which I'll get to in a minute. He was really good at kind of keeping things moving on those swing sequences that Randle was setting up. Randle was doing really well with, getting inside, getting doubled, kicking it back out. It was just a really good game for both those guys, I think, for both the biggest stars on the Knicks. And then the Villanova trio is really finding their way. 60 points combined in this game. And those three and Randle in the third quarter really sparked a huge run for the Knicks. So I like that. There was just constant motion going on there. Lots of cutting, lots of, hitting 3-pointers. And, like I said, kind of starting the entire action from Randle being in the post, trying to draw a double, typically succeeding, and then kicking it out, getting the sequence started around the perimeter, whether it was Josh Hart hitting a 3 or driving in, whether it was Brunson doing the same deal, whether it was DiVincenzo basically just spotting up and hitting threes in this game. It was just a really good look on offense, which I'll get into more with each individual player breakdown. But on defense, I thought that they really took advantage of the fact that Toronto doesn't have a lot of guys that are great ball handlers up and down the lineup, and they force guys into awkward situations like that. They pretty much have Dennis Schroeder, and that's it. They're relying a lot on Siakam and Anunoby and Scotty Barnes, especially to handle the ball and initiate offense. And I just don't know if that's the best way to utilize those guys. I think it would be a lot like if the Knicks had Randle bring the ball down every time, which they don't. They typically now get Randle involved in actions once you get set up in your offense, and they still have a Brunson to bring it down, or quickly, or whoever else. Whereas the Raptors kind of just have Schroeder, who's never been exactly the strongest like game manager of a point guard anyway, coming down and doing that. And then they also, have Scotty Barnes and guys like that. I thought the Knicks did a good job of kind of taking advantage of that, forcing guys into awkward situations, forcing them into situations where they had to make a quick decision, and then taking advantage, creating turnovers that way, and just kind of taking advantage of what the Raptors were willing to give them. They also were more willing to surrender the three in this game, which was super smart as well. Sometimes that bites the Knicks, but I think it was fine because like Toronto isn't the three-point shooting team they used to be. They shot 6 of 32 in this game, which is like 18%. And they're shooting 33.7% so far this year, which is second worst in the NBA. So smart decision by the Knicks to kind of say, hey, we're going to funnel them inside. We're going to let Mitchell Robinson handle all this and deal with all that length around the rim. And he did great as far as forcing them into compromising situations there. And then when they would panic and say, oh, no, we need to kick the ball to the perimeter, you'd either kick it out and get a brick from three, or kick it out and, potentially right into the waiting arms of a Nick who's waiting there to play the passing lanes, as they've been so good at this year. That's a stat I wanted to point out, because this was something that I said before the season that I thought might be an uptick for the Knicks this year, and so far is bearing fruit. The Knicks are up to 7.9 steals per game this year, which is now 12th best in the NBA. So they're in the top half of the league now in steals generated per game, way, way up from their 6.4 steals that they had per game last year, which was 28th place. So this game just kind of underscored that. They did such a good job playing those passing lanes, turning that into transition opportunities, but mostly just playing the Raptors in such a way that would expose every weakness that they had on offense, and it really worked. Also, the Knicks, I mentioned that they were getting out in transition, and sorry, I got down a stats rabbit hole in this one, so I'll get into individual players in just a second. But the Knicks were 14th, or are 14th in transition frequency this year, which I found interesting. They're up from 17th last year, but they're also tied for third in points per possession in transition at 1.19 this year, which is fantastic. I mean, that means, yeah. I mean, if anytime you're over 1 point per possession in pretty much any category, you're doing really well for yourself. But like, to be around 1.19, that's crazy. Also, they have the lowest turnover frequency in transition in the NBA at 8.5%. So I really just think, what this tells me is that those active hands on defense combined with extremely efficient transition offense have really been a revelation for them this year. So I hope they keep that going, not just against the Raptors. I mean, I think it becomes a little harder to employ the defense that they did in this game effectively if the other team is a better three-point shooting team. But against the Raptors, where they had the runway to do that and the latitude to do that because of how bad of a three-point shooting team they are, I think it was really sound strategy, and really did well for them. So a lot of great positives to see in this game. Really good game to like build some momentum towards the in-season tournament, I think, where you're going to be facing a Milwaukee team that has better shooting than this team, but also, can be exploited in some of the same ways. I think, they rely on some bigger guys to handle the ball and stuff like that. But, you're going to have to cover the perimeter a lot better against Milwaukee. So I hope they take some of the things away from this, like the transition offense, because they're another, Milwaukee's another team that can bother you with Giannis and Brook Lopez and Chris Middleton and all those guys, as well as all the, 3-and-D guys they've surrounded Giannis with there. But, defensively, I hope that they have a little bit of a better strategy as far as defending the 3-point line. But, we've seen the Knicks are pretty good at adjusting their defensive scheme for what opponent they're facing, more so this year than in the past. So I hope that they're ready for that challenge against Milwaukee on Tuesday. I want to talk individually about Julius Randle, Jalen Brunson, Josh Hart, Donte DiVincenzo, Mitchell Robinson, RJ Barrett, all the guys that are still left to talk about individually in this game. and get into some of the nitty gritty on them. But first, I got to remind you all that today's show is brought to you by Jase Medical. And, certain things happen sometimes that can, make medicine hard to come by when you really need it. Supply chain shortages, natural disasters, things of that nature. That you never know when the unexpected is going to happen, and that's why it's the unexpected, right? It's not the expected, it's the unexpected. And we kind of come to sports to escape from some of the crazy realities of real life, but sometimes there's real life situations, where you need medicine and you can't get it, and it's a situation where you need antibiotics or whatever the case may be. Now, I think you should always still get a consultation from a doctor, whether it's like a telehealth or whatever you're able to get. But in a situation where there's been, we're not immune to like hurricanes and stuff up here in the Northeast and whatever, where there's a situation where you can't, or even just a giant rainstorm anymore has the tendency to flood Brooklyn or flood. I live out in New Jersey, whatever. But it's good to potentially have those medicines that you need so you can just do a telehealth appointment and have what you need on hand to treat yourself in a situation where things are more dire. So Jase Medical offers the Jase case, which is a pack of 5 different antibiotics to treat a long list of bacterial illnesses, including UTIs, respiratory infections, sinusitis, skin infections, among others. So you could be prepared for that. So visit jasemedical.com and complete your physician encounter. It'll be reviewed by a board certified physician, and your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular cost. It's never been more important to be prepared than today. So go to jasemedical.com and use offer code locked on to get $20 off your order. All right, and back in to continue talking through this great Knicks win over the Raptors. And I thought Julius Randle was the first guy I wanted to talk about again this game. I've been really impressed with how he's playing lately, and how he plays against the Bucks in this next game will be a huge test for him. I know that's a matchup that he's sometimes had trouble with in the past, so I want to see him, really show out against the Bucks and against Giannis and all that. But for this game, I mean, he kept it going with the really good play that we've been seeing from him lately. 20 points, 10 rebounds, 9 assists, flirted with a triple double again, 8 of 15 shooting. So he was efficient, was only 1 of 4 from 3, but didn't press the issue too hard there, which you like to see as well. And, I think that Toronto's length really bothers Randall, more so than maybe anyone on the Knicks. I think maybe it's like RJ has a really hard time with defenders like that, and Randall does as well sometimes. And RJ, I'll get to probably last of everyone here because everybody's really concerned about his shooting or whatever. But RJ has that had that trouble in this game, I think, a little bit. Randall did not. I mean, I think that he just found a blueprint for how to beat a team like this with guys like that, which he just uses pure brute strength. He just kept getting a shoulder into Siakam or Anunoby or whoever happened to be defending him. And he just created enough space to get off at the very minimum, like get off a mid-range shot, which was really falling for him in this game. And honestly, like for him and Brunson especially, I've got no problem with them going to that mid-range shot, even though it's not like the blueprint efficient shot in today's NBA. Like those two guys have so much talent from that range that I have no problem with, like, if as long as they're hitting in any given game, just continuing to go to that well. And he certainly did. He just kept getting a shoulder into someone, creating that little bit of space he needed, then going out for that mid-range shot, which is smart rather than going to the hoop and, potentially getting blocked every time because they do have all that length around the hoop. Just create the space you needed, take it from, 5 to 10 feet or whatever, instead of, trying to get all the way to the hoop and potentially getting blocked. I thought it was a really smart strategy for him. Toronto also kind of tried the same thing that like 90% of Nick opponents have tried lately by aggressively doubling Randall in the post. And he just kept his streak going of making great reads and leading the team in assists again. And he just, consistently was getting the ball deep. And, that was kind of what he was doing when he would get it all the way down towards the hoop. Toronto would go, okay, like he's right next to the hoop, time to collapse. Got all the way in there, and they would send a second defender. And then Randall always had his eyes open, always was able to see someone in the corner, or always just kind of knew that they were going to be there, was able to kick it out to the corner or sometimes up top, behind him, whatever the case may be, and, get the ball out to somewhere productive, which then turned into a lot of made buckets for the Knicks. Lastly, for Randall, he was smiling. I thought that was something worth noting. I don't know. This was like the happiest I think I've seen Randall look in pretty much this whole season. So, I hope we see more smiles from him. He's notoriously a little grumpy sometimes, and I think I think this game looked like a good turnaround for him, having fun in a game and really, you know, showing it on his face, emoting a little bit. I like to see that. I would like the whole team to be happy and emoting and dapping each other up and having a good time the whole game. So I like seeing that out of Randall. Jalen Brunson had more that I like to see as well. 22 points, 8 assists, 5 rebounds, 3 of 8 from three, 9 of 21 shooting overall. I thought that Brunson also had a really good scoring game. Not quite as efficient as Randall, but all in all, kind of just stirred the drink like he usually does. Took his attempts and was pretty efficient with it. 3 of 8 from three. You'll take that all day. Stretching the defense with those 3-point attempts. I thought he really utilized his lightning quick release in this one to torch the bigger Raptor defenders when he happened to have them on him. That would happen a lot during like swing sequences around the perimeter. He would get it with just a little bit of space and take that really quick release to make sure that he got his attempt off. But once again, I thought he did a really good job distributing as well. Transition is going to keep coming up for me in this one because I think that transition was so key, and Brunson was key to making transition work in this game. Second, he would get the ball, and it was a transition opportunity. He just was head up, looking for his teammates, and would find one of them, whether it was DiVincenzo in the corner for a three, quickly in the corner for a three, Josh Hart in transition, driving to the hoop, like Julius Randle, I think twice he hit in transition for dunks. Maybe the one wasn't him. One might have been RJ, but either way, I mean, I thought he did a really nice job just keeping pushing the pace, always having an eye out for the open man and finding the open man plenty of times, 8 to be exact. So that was really great from him. Other than that, he was like the only guy who consistently had a not freaky long matchup on him, because the Raptors, they'll play like Scotty Barnes as their like 2-man, or whatever you want to consider him. But, it'll be like Barnes, Anunoby, Siakam from 2 to 4, and then Jakob Poeltl, manning the 5, and then Schroeder as the 1. So, Brunson was the only guy that had someone on him that's below average NBA size, and he definitely took advantage of that. He had his usual array of like awesome moves in the post when he got a chance to, just the jab stepping, pivoting, getting his shoulder into Schroeder, whatever, creating a mid-range look for himself. So that was really good to see as well. And smart to try to, keep that favorable matchup on Brunson as much as possible, and then, utilize it and abuse it whenever you can. Also, I looked up just because we're getting real close to the quarterway mark of the season. One more game, we would consider it probably the quarterway mark. 20 out of 82 would be the next game, so pretty close. But don't look now, but Brunson is currently 6th in the NBA in 3-point percentage, 47.4% for the season this year. He's 3rd in made threes with 63, and he's only 19th in attempts with 133. So that's just super, super elite for him so far this year. Hopefully that doesn't calm down. I'm sure that at some point he'll go through like a mini slump, but I mean, if he can keep up like 42% from three this year and keep that volume going and maybe even jack the volume up, that would be great for the Knicks. He's on pace right now for 271 to 272 made threes this year, which would absolutely shatter Evan Fournier's record of 241 from a couple years ago. So fingers crossed that a more, no offense to Fournier, but a more beloved Knick can reclaim that record again after it was John Starks's for like 30 years, became Fournier's, and now Fournier 2 years later is not even in the rotation on the team anymore. So we'll see if maybe Brunson can reclaim a little history for the Knicks this year. But I want to talk about, speaking of history, that wasn't really super historical, but Josh Hart had 15 straight points in this game. That was pretty cool. So I want to talk about that. Donte DiVincenzo's 7 3-pointers made, which was great as well. Mitchell Robinson doing work on the inside again, with tons of defensive stats to show for it. And RJ Barrett, who is struggling a little bit, but I don't think it's quite as dire as a lot of people seem to think. So we'll talk about that in just a sec. But first, I got to remind everybody that today's show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. And as the weather's getting colder, the NFL offers are staying hot on FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. So if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is super easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. And I pump it up every single time I do this read, but it's my favorite feature. Same game parlays. That's what's and more. They're so fun. You can go into a single game, put together a multi-leg bet that you wouldn't normally be able to put together without this feature. So you can say, like, oh, I think Julius Randle is going to have over 7.5 assists. And I think Jalen Brunson is going to have over 20.5 points. And I think Donte DiVincenzo is going to have over 3.5 made threes. And while all those things by themselves might not pay out huge, you combine all of them, and the decreased likelihood with each individual thing that you add makes it so that FanDuel gives you a bunch more money if that hits. So if you're smart and you know your team, like we know our Knicks, you can go in there, place a multi-leg bet and say, I feel pretty confident about this all happening, and make a good deal more money than you would just by betting on things individually. So visit fanduel.com/locked on, and you can keep working through the NFL season, but New York sports wise, maybe you just want to pay attention to the Knicks right now. FanDuel, it's the official partner of the NFL. All right, and I'm back in to finish talking about this Knicks win over the Raptors. I want to talk about Josh Hart now. 17 points, 7 of 11 shooting, 8 boards. He scored 15 straight points in the third quarter. Crazy production for him. I mean, obviously the 15 points straight was the highlight of the game for him, but he did a little bit of everything that he does at his best during that stretch. So I'll just go over each one of his baskets that he made for those 15 straight points, because I honestly thought it was like he just kind of opened up his bag and took out one of everything. So first off, he drove in, missed a floater, but then got his own rebound, hit a second one. So that's pretty stereotypical Josh Hart. Great rebounder, good at those second opportunities. So does that first, then hits a corner three off a nice Randle feed. This Josh Hart stretch really helped out Randle's 9 assists for the game. Cut for another hoop off of a Randle feed on the next one. Just great instincts. Randle got doubled in the post, and Hart just cuts straight down the middle, gets the ball, goes up for a layup and hits it. Then hits a three above the break on the left side. Then caught it off the perimeter off of Julius kickout and attacked that closeout to get all the way in and score again. So another good instinct there from him to utilize the fact that he had made a couple threes already and was getting that attention, and then get all the way in, and then makes an above the break three from the right side. So hits from both sides. It was just really great for him. I loved the whole stretch, and I'm sure that everybody did. But it kind of happened quietly, other than the fact that the announcers were announcing it. But it was just because he was doing everything in his usual way of just being efficient, uh, you know, taking the right shots, not forcing anything. It worked really well. I think that he clearly has confidence issues from three. Like, Josh Hart has literally said as much recently, where he was saying he's not a catch and shoot guy, but I mean, he could really fool me lately. Like, he's up to 35% on 3 attempts per game now. If he could just hold steady there, I mean, he doesn't have to shoot like 40% on like 8 attempts per game or anything. You can leave that to Donte DiVincenzo, who I'll talk about in a sec. But like, if he just shoots 35%, 3 attempts per game like he's doing right now, I think that's more than enough to make teams respect him, create enough pressure that he can then attack closeouts, which is where he really shines, with getting inside, with kicking it back out to the perimeter, with all the various things that he does when he's not shooting threes, but at least is getting respected from there. So, props to Josh Hart. I hope that this all keeps up, because the Knicks are going to need that. Speaking of things the Knicks need, Donte DiVincenzo, 21 points, 7 of 9 from 3 in this game. And I think we're really starting to see the ideal version of DiVincenzo. He played with energy the whole time. There's not like a ton to break down as far as what he did in this game, because he's maybe the most consistent player on the team as far as what you get from him on a night in, night out basis. You're going to get energy on defense. You're going to get him playing the passing lanes. You're going to get, him staying glued to his man, regardless if he's outsized a little bit. And of course, you're going to get 3-pointers, which in this game he was doing more than, any time this season. This is super lofty, but like, I really do think with the way that he hit shots in this game, getting it like, in transition, getting bailouts, late in the shot clock, things like that. And with how quick his release was in this game, it gives him almost like a Klay Thompson-esque effect on the game. I don't know. I think that when he's hot, you can really tap into different ways of 3-point shooting with him than we've seen on this team in recent years, which like the bailout is one thing, but transition 3-point shooting is huge. And the Knicks have kind of struggled with that in past years. You'll have fleeting games where it works for Quentin Grimes or it works for Emmanuel quickly, but DiVincenzo, with the way that he's shooting lately, if he can keep it up, transition 3-point shooting is such a huge skill to have. Like there was one point where he got the ball in transition in the corner, and it was a nice feed from Brunson in this case. And I think he could have reasonably put it on the ground and just gone all the way into the hoop and gotten a layup, but he knew, the team knew, everyone knew he was so hot right there that it just made more sense for him to shoot the three, and he hit it off that transition look, and then you get 3 points there instead of two, and it's way more backbreaking in terms of the other team, seeing that go down. So I thought that was great, and I think that's just a nice little wrinkle that he's kind of adding to this offense right now, especially in transition with that great points per possession and the fact that the Knicks are, getting out in transition a little more than they have in the past. Transition 3-point shooting is like one of those skills that the Knicks have lagged on a bit in recent years as the league has gotten more into 3-point shooting. I think DiVincenzo kind of unlocks that for them. Mitchell Robinson had a good game as well. Again, not a huge statistical game for him. 6 points, 5 boards. 5 boards is pretty low for him. Normally, he just gets that in offensive rebounds, but he also had 4 steals and a block in 32 minutes. I don't know how much more there is to say about Mitch's D at this point, except maybe that he's having like one of the least concerning dips in blocks ever. He's having a career low 1.4 blocks per game this year, which is different for him. But he's having a career high 1.5 steals per game. So I just think he's constantly blowing up plays on the inside. He and Isaiah Hartenstein both are doing that, getting steals, generating, deflections that lead to Knicks transition opportunities. But really, he just like, even if he's not getting blocks, guys just refuse to do anything on the inside against him. Like part of the reason I think he's getting more steals is because he's such an intimidator blocking the ball that guys get in there and then they go, oh man, I got here. Now what do I do? Because I've got Mitchell Robinson sitting here on the inside. And that leads to him then, instead of getting a block, that guy will make a second or have a second thought about taking a shot, and then go up for it and then change his mind maybe midair or maybe halfway through his steps to the hoop, and then go, oh, maybe I should kick this out instead. And then Mitch is ready to go there too with active hands, either stripping the ball right out of the guy's hands or using those like go gadget arms to reach out and get it as the person's trying to pass it away, and deflect it and get the break going for the Knicks. So he's blowing up plays constantly. I love what he's doing. I think if the Knicks defense holds up as a top 10 unit, he definitely needs to get Defensive Player of the Year consideration, because he's the guy that's making that happen for the Knicks. Also, Grimes and RJ Barrett both had really nice feeds to Mitch at separate points in this game. So I hope that we say this all the time, but I hope that the Mitch and RJ pick and roll comes back more often, because that was always really effective at getting both those guys going. And I hope the Grimes Mitch pick and roll comes up from time to time too, to get all three of those guys a little more time to shine in the starting unit. I think Mitch is a really easy way to, generate some form of action for RJ and for Grimes and get them moving, get them involved in the offense in a different capacity than just sort of receiving the ball on the perimeter and figuring it out from there. So hopefully that's something we see a little more often going forward. And Mitch, even though he's not like an offensive dynamo, could potentially be, a guy that, it can get other guys going by virtue of the things that he's good at. Speaking of RJ Barrett too, he'll be the last guy I talk about here, but he had the first 7 points for the Knicks, but then finished 6 of 18 on from the field for 15 points, had 4 boards, 6 assists. I mean, I don't know. I'm seeing a lot of panic about his shooting struggles since the migraines and whatever, but I think he's still finding ways to contribute even if the shot isn't going down. So I've not been super worried about it. Like last game, it was the free throw shooting against Detroit. This game, it was the assists and just kind of keeping the ball moving. I think he obviously wanted to show out in his hometown in Toronto, because he's from Canada and everything. But I think that he just got a little overzealous maybe in this game. Like he was doing I was mentioning that Julius had that midi to go to, if so that he could avoid all that length from the Raptors, and that's what helped him. Like, I think RJ doesn't have that he's as confident in yet. So he was still trying to get all the way to the hoop like he normally does, but he was getting it blown up in there. Having, going up and either just missing layups because of the disturbance from all the length around him, or like getting blocked, or what have you. It was just sort of a tough game for him because he doesn't really have that floater or a midi to go to kind of mitigate when there's all these really tall defenders on the inside. Like, he just kind of banks on being big, strong, and able to get all the way in there, generate free throw attempts, stuff like that. So he didn't get a ton of that in this game, but he kept the ball moving really well. He ended up with 6 assists. So it was a really good game, like, for the big three, as far as passing the ball and getting everybody else involved in this game. So, like, I'm not super worried about it. If he's doing other things to help the team win, then if the shot's not going down, but he's not like actively sinking the team just with his presence out there, then I'm fine with it. Um, I would say just like if these struggles go on for like a month, then maybe get back to me about potentially worrying here. But I mean, shooting streaks happen in the NBA. We certainly know that, like, of all players, RJ Barrett is not immune to streaky shooting. And maybe this kind of just is who he is at this point. But if it all evens out in the end and he's shooting around 40% from three for the year, and he's, averaging around 20 points per game, the Knicks have enough talent to absorb bad shooting nights from him. So then when he has the good shooting nights, it helps them out. So, there's not a single player in the NBA that's immune to being streaky. RJ just kind of is a little more streaky than most, which you'd love to see get remedied at some point in his career, but we're now in year 5, and that's just kind of how it is. That's just the RJ Barrett experience at this point. So I wish people would just stop overreacting. Anyway, I think that's it for this game. So next game will be the in-season tournament on Tuesday against Milwaukee. Obviously, we don't know what the rest of the next week is going to look like beyond that, because it's going to be they could potentially be playing for the in-season tournament championship by the end of the week, or they could be just playing a second regular season game and then getting a nice little break until they face, I believe, the Raptors again once they get back from the whole in-season tournament experience. So we'll see how that all goes, see what the next week holds. But we'll be here for you guys 100% of that time, as well as for some other shows in between. But till then, thank you all for listening, and I'll talk to y'all soon. Peace out, everybody.